Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors achieved the unimaginable, surviving the brutal ice age, hunting mammoths, fighting off giant creatures. They survived and made us the dominant species on this planet. But the catch? 5 ancient survival instincts are still secretly manipulating your life in the 21st century. They're the real culprits behind your late-night cravings. The reason you toss and turn at night for no apparent reason. And the root cause of the FOMO that always makes you feel like you're falling behind. The first culprit is Instinct 1, the Stone Age stomach. Let's step back in time for a minute. Imagine you're standing in the middle of the Ice Age. A bone-chilling wind is howling. Your tribe hasn't had a bite to eat in days. The line between life and death is measured in hours. Suddenly, you spot a honeycomb dripping with honey, or a rare bush of sweet berries. That's not just a meal. That's a miracle that will keep you alive for another week. Science calls this optimal foraging theory. When faced with sugar or fat, your hunger and primal survival instincts immediately take control. Your brain screams, "Eat it now, store the fat, or else you'll starve tomorrow." But here's the modern tragedy, that starving tomorrow never comes. You're sitting in a warm apartment. A 24/7 fast food joint is just a 5-minute drive away. Your fridge is always fully stocked, but your brain has no idea. That's why at 10 p.m., even though you swore you were going on a diet that very morning, you're sneaking into the kitchen just to hunt down a donut or a cold slice of pizza. Society judges you. You even label yourself undisciplined, gluttonous, and completely lacking willpower. The truth? Your body is just desperately trying to survive a brutal winter that exists entirely in your imagination. Instinct 2. The Stone Age night watchman. Night falls. You're huddled in a dark cave. Nap. The sharp crack of a dry branch breaks the silence. If you optimistically assume it's just the wind, you become a predator's midnight snack. If you panic and instantly grab your spear, you live. The ultimate rule of survival. Always prepare for the worst. Science calls this the negativity bias. To keep you alive, your brain carves every threat into stone. But joy? It just writes that on water. But here's the modern tragedy. You're lying on a plush mattress. The doors are locked tight. There is absolutely no saber-toothed tiger lurking in the shadows. But the night watchman in your brain is still wide awake. It drags out your boss's frown from this afternoon and dissects it. An unanswered email. Or worse, an awkward thing you said at a party 4 years ago. The internal sirens blare, your heart pounds, you toss and turn until 2 a.m. trying to fend off a disaster that doesn't even exist. Society shakes its head. What an overthinker, so pessimistic and overly sensitive. The truth? You're not being negative. Your brain doesn't hate you, it's just loyally doing its job as the night watchman. It would rather trigger a false alarm than risk your life. Instinct 3. The trap of the familiar cave. You're stuck in a soul-sucking job, or gritting your teeth through a toxic relationship. You know full well you need to get out, but just the thought of starting over from scratch leaves you paralyzed. Society looks on and sighs, assuming you're just complacent and willing to settle. Why is change so terrifying? Science has a specific name for this paralysis: risk aversion. Let's flash back to prehistoric times to see the root of this absurdity. Tens of thousands of years ago, stepping off the beaten path meant suicide. Trying a strange, brightly colored mushroom? Dead. Poking your head into an unexplored cave? You're a bear's dinner. Exploration was always a gamble paid for in blood. It was better to survive in a familiar hell than to throw yourself into an unknown paradise. So your hesitation right now isn't cowardice. Your brain is just doing its job. It's desperately holding you back, completely terrified that you're about to step out of your safe cave and dive headfirst into a bush full of venomous snakes. Instinct 4. The panicked firekeeper syndrome. Let's run a quick comparison. In prehistoric times, the fire accidentally goes out. Your ancestors lose their lives. Today, your flight gets delayed by 15 minutes. You lose your mind. Tens of thousands of years ago, miscalculate your firewood reserves. The whole tribe freezes to death. In the 21st century, your work schedule gets thrown off by a single beat. You stress out to the point of losing your hair. See how absurd that gap is? Scientists call this the illusion of control. Our ancestors' world was full of unpredictable dangers. Storms, wild beasts, droughts. Everything was completely out of their hands. The only way to avoid being wiped out was to micromanage everything within their reach. And now, your brain has dragged that exhausting operating system straight into the inherently chaotic modern world. The result? It gets completely overwhelmed. It frantically forces you to plan out every little detail, insisting that everything must stay exactly on track. And society labels you a control freak, someone who's obsessive and toxic. But the truth? You're not actually dictatorial or overbearing. Your brain is just in a state of sheer panic. It clings to jam-packed planners to salvage some sense of order, exactly like a caveman desperately guarding a dying fire in the middle of a raging winter blizzard. Instinct 5. The outcast's death sentence. It's 11 p.m. You're mindlessly scrolling through social media. You see an old coworker just got promoted. You see your friend group checking in at a glamorous 5-star resort. You look down at your hastily microwaved noodles. Your heart sinks. A suffocating lump forms in your throat. Logically, they're just harmless photos on a screen. So why does the feeling of being left behind create such a real, agonizing pain? Welcome to herd mentality. Science proves that the brain processes the pain of falling behind or being excluded the exact same way it processes a bleeding physical wound. Why does it have to be so extreme? Let's rewind to prehistoric times. Back then, being alone wasn't considered chill. Being alone meant death. You couldn't fend off a wolf pack by yourself. If you were at the bottom of the tribe's pecking order, you only got the leftover scraps and bones. Do something weird and get banished? The darkness outside would swallow you whole in an instant. Fitting in, holding status, and not getting left behind wasn't about showing off. It was a life or death genetic code. Back to the present. The tragedy is that your brain has no idea the world has changed. Whether you drive a clunker or wear clothes from the clearance rack, nobody is going to kick you off the planet. Comparison no longer provides you with food or protection. That wave of jealousy and self-pity isn't because you're a failure. It's simply your brain screaming in panic. It genuinely believes you're about to be abandoned by the tribe and left for the wolves. That is exactly why you constantly feel conflicted and exhausted by your own mind. Skyscrapers and glowing screens popped up way too fast, and our brain simply didn't have time to hit update. It's forced to run a Stone Age operating system in the middle of a modern world. But fortunately, evolution also gifted us an invaluable weapon: awareness. We can't delete these instincts entirely, but we can call them out by name. You can smile at the panicked caveman inside your head, understand it, and most importantly, you have the power to reject its manipulation. So the next time you slip up and bite into a midnight donut, or find yourself tossing and turning over a negative thought, don't beat yourself up. Gently thank your brain for working so hard to protect you, then soothe it and say, "Thank you, but we're safe now."